This conference will now be recorded.
Right. So when you consider network, which is key for any of the solutions, be it be on Azure or AWS or GCP. So right now we are accessing this portal using public internet. It means whether you are in Airtel, whether you are in Geo network, whatever the network you are using, you will be able to access this website, right? And all the services within Azure. So let's say virtual machines, storage, and uh, availability sets, all app services, whatever the services which are there in Azure, each and every service is connected through the internet across all the data centers for Microsoft Azure, right? It means without a network, you will not be able to communicate to any of your services, whether it is through this portal or whether it is something within the backend of Azure data center. Okay, so even for us, in order to define networks in Azure, we have got wide variety of concepts which we are going to discuss now. So if you consider, so now whatever we are accessing, let's say this is Azure portal, and here you have got all of your services, let's say VM, storage, and you have got all the resource groups, apps, everything is there. Now we are accessing it from our laptops or desktops, whatever you are using. We are trying to access it using public internet. Okay, so when I say public internet, it means each and every network that we are using, like whether it is Geo or Airtel, as I said, it is through the public level. It means anyone can access. Now, because of security limitations and because of various security attacks, I wanted to make it private. So in order to make it private, I'm going to, let's say, the same Azure subscription. I'm just drawing one more thing here. Same Azure subscription. In order to access it from my device, from my laptop, if I use public internet, it should not work. Just like VPN, okay? So I'm going to enable a private connection because I've got critical services in Azure. Here you can see that virtual machines, resource group, whatever it is, you can see all the critical services in your Azure subscription. So I don't want to make it unsecured. So I wanted to make it secured using private network, right? So when I say private network, you are going to use isolated networks within Azure to access it from Azure services, sorry, from your devices. So here I am saying one laptop, but consider enterprise, you will have hundreds of users, okay? Hundreds of users where they will be accessing using private network, because if they access it through the public internet, there are like security violations where it is difficult to tackle, and if there is any unexpected things happen. Okay, so now for each and every service, whether it is in Azure or even in your on premises, if you are in network, you will be getting one IP address to your device. Even whether it is Geo or Airtel, you will be getting IP address on your system. Even in your mobile, it will work based on IP address. Without IP address, it will not be able to communicate through the network. Even our mobiles, whether you are using Wi-Fi or the actual SIM card directly, you will have IP address that can be found in your mobile, so which you can search when once you have a time. So we have got two types of IP addresses here. One is public IP addresses, and the second one is private IP addresses. Okay, so these public IP addresses will be provided by internet service providers. Okay, let's say when I say internet service provider, let's say you're using BSNL, you're using Airtel. These guys will own all these public IP addresses, and they will be selling internet services based on this public IP address connectivity. And these private IP addresses anyone can use, but in order to make sure that internet is available on this private, again you have to connect to public IP address. So overall, if you consider, we have got public IP addresses and private IP addresses. So when I say private IP addresses, again under that there are different classes. Even in public IP address, there are different classes. It is like same similar to private IP addresses. The first one is class A, class B, class C, and we also have class D and class E IP addresses. So these are very basics. If you are already aware, ignore. The people who are new to this, like it will be beneficial for them. So in class C IP addresses, you will have the ranges. Before that, let me check my IP address. So here I can see that this is my IP address, which is linked to my through this Wi-Fi adapter. Okay, but that's not the actual IP address. So we have got different ranges of IP addresses, and under private IP addresses, class A will be starting from 2 10.255.255.255. So I'm not giving a definition of what is IP address. So that's the reason I've shared the links to you. You should have gone through that. So now class B is 172.16.0.0 till 172.31.255.255. And class E 192.168.0.0 till 192.168.255.255. So these are the ranges which we are going to use as part of private IP addresses virtual network configuration. Okay. And class A, B, C are the ranges which we will be using mostly. And class D and E will be used for will be used by scientists and uh, like the weather forecasting services. They will be using class D and E IP addresses. So these two ranges, like we don't want to know that these are the two ranges where these are reserved for scientific and research activities, whether it is weather forecasting or whether it is any uh, like the rockets, like satellites, whatever they are using, they will be using these two ranges of IP addresses. Okay, okay. So now, and we call this as IP version 4 IP addresses. So these are the ranges which has been defined like very like I think 20 years ago, and now recently, not recently, it's like again they have introduced IPv6 addresses as well. So to work on this IPv6 addresses, still most of the companies are not using this because of the complexity and because of various other reasons. Okay, so we have got IPv6 addresses as the latest version, and still most of the organizations are using IP version 4 only, right? Some companies in China, some companies in Russia, some companies in US are using both IP version 4 and IP version 6. So let me show you how a IP version 6, yeah, will look like. So IP version 6 will be something like this. Let me use this Cisco. Okay, let me go through wiki only then, or using this one. Right. So IP version 6 will be looking like this. it is very difficult to remember. So this is also one of the reason most of the organizations are still with IP version 4. Okay, so why they have introduced this IP version 6 if there is already IP version 4 in the content? So yeah, private IP addresses అన్ని fine, but public IP address వచ్చేసరికి IP version 4 almost end of the life అన్నమాట, end of the cycle, because there are billions of users across the world who are using the internet. If they wanted to allocate one public IP address to each and every user, it's already exhausted, right? That's the reason in the enterprises, let's say if any enterprise takes a service from Act Broadband or Hathway, whatever it is. So when they take Act Broadband, they will be purchasing public IP addresses also. Okay. Even for each and every website that you are using in the internet, there will be a public IP address which has been reserved by that company. Okay. Let's say if you want to go for, I'm trying this one. See here. So I'm getting a response from this IP address. So this is a public IP address which has been purchased by Google. So Google will not only have this one IP address, they will have hundreds of public IP addresses to manage their websites, to manage their applications across the internet. So all those IP addresses from internet service providers are exhausted. It means in the world, you will have only one public IP address. Like you'll not have a copy. What I mean is you cannot have the same IP address for another provider or for another user, just like our mobile numbers, right? You can have only one mobile number, just like yours. Like there will not be any other person who will be having the same number, but there might be some difference within that. Let's say in place of 9, they'll have 8. Okay. Similarly, public IP is also the same. So to mitigate this issue, they have introduced IP version 6 addresses, where here you'll have some billions of IP addresses that can be used for next 2 to 3 generations. So that's where they have come up with this IP version 6 addresses. Okay, so you can see, like if you go through the very basics, there are different formulas, right? 64-bit, 128-bit, something like that. So this IP version 6 is 128-bit IP addresses format. Like it will have all the requirements. If you go through this wiki also, it will show you. Okay, each and every information, and they will explain each and every number also. And they are saying that zeros can be omitted. So let's not deep dive into that. So IP version 4 is 32-bit address and IP version 6 is 128 bits IP addresses. So it is a very basic thing, and let's not deep dive into that versions. Now, coming back to Azure. In Azure, we have got both IP version 4 and IP version 6. It depends on your business needs. You can use, if you have a knowledge on IP version 4, you can go with that. Or if you are familiar with IP version 6, go with that as well. However, since we are not into a purely network background, you can take help from networking, because networks are very crucial in any of the solution, whether it is in Azure or whether it is in on-premises. Okay, so how are you going to define the ranges? ఇక్కడ range ఇచ్చాను. So this will give you some lakhs of IP addresses, but we don't want those many IP addresses. And even in class B, we have some lakhs of IP addresses, right? So which one you want to choose? It is up to you that you have to define. Let's say for large scale organizations who has got more users, more employees, and they have got more devices. When I say device, it can be a laptop, desktop, printer, servers, whatever it is. So for each and every device, they needs an IP address. So if they've got more and more number of IP address, sorry, more and more number of devices in their organization, they have to go with Class A, because in Class A, they have a flexibility to leverage maximum IP addresses. It's up to them whether they can go for Class A or Class B, but they have to plan accordingly. So they can also use both, because in private IP addresses you can use Class A, B, C all together. It is up to the organization how they wanted to strategize their networks. Okay, and that is one basic thing. And with this, I'll directly go to the portal, and we will see there are different formulas how you can calculate number of devices. I mean, how many IP addresses that you need based on the number of devices. So let's say you need 100 IP addresses for your organization. So we have a concept called subnetting, and where they will be using some formulas to define the range of IP addresses. ఎందుకంటే ఇక్కడ 10.00 10.255 ఉందనుకో, it will have a lot of numbers in between. So let's say that will be, yeah, let's say if you start with 10.0.0 as it is not first IP address, this is the first one that you get. So and then the second IP address will be 10.0.0.2, and so on. It can go up to 10.0.0.255. And now I am starting 10.0.1.1, that can go up to 10.0.0.1.255, 10.0.2.1. So likewise, you can create virtual networks, and that can go up to the maximum extent based on the availability on this VNet. We call it as virtual network, and then we are going to use subnetting. Let's see, like, you don't need to remember any formulas, because in Azure each and everything is predefined. You just give the entry that will show you number of IP addresses available. Okay, and when you consider, yeah, likewise you will have number of IP addresses that can be defined. Now, how do you know if I start from this, and how do you know that how many IP addresses that you have in between this starting point and second point? You have to do some calculation. So there are formulas. If you are still interested, you can go and learn formulas. That is difficult. I mean, it's not difficult, but since we'll not be using regularly and we have got automated tools available, so you can go ahead and use that tools directly. I'll show you how to use that as well. Now, so just to give you a heads up, and we don't know how many IP addresses that we have, and we don't know how many IP addresses we need. We know just only like number of devices that you have. So let's say I have got uh, 200 devices. It means I need 200 IP addresses to communicate between the devices from one device to another using IP address. So how can we define this? I'll take an example, class A. Okay, so in class A, I'll start from 10.0.0.0 slash, I'm just giving you a blind identification here, 24. So when I give slash 24, it means you will have 256 IP addresses. Okay, so there are formulas to calculate this, but I'm not giving those formulas now. That will deviate entire session of this. And if I give 10.0.0 slash 25. This will give me 128 IP addresses. Observe, like, then I will explain. And then 10.0.0.0/26, which will give you 64 IP addresses. 10.0.0.0/27, which will give you 32 IPs. Okay, I'll send these notes to you also. 10.0.0/28 will give you 16 IPs. 10.0.0.0/29 will give you 8 IP addresses. So if you observe, I have given /24. So this is nothing but CIDR notation. I have used /24, /25, /26. CIDR is nothing but classless inter-domain routing, or some people will call it as Cisco inter-domain routing, because they have developed this one. Okay, now how I am getting this count? As I said, there are formulas like 2 power n minus 2, 2 power n h minus 2, something like that. So let me show you those formulas as well, just to make you understand. You've got a lot of videos also, but those are irrelevant now. See here, 24 will give you 256 and something like this. You have to calculate, where is that? No, this is not giving me the right numbers, right formulas. This is the one. So each and every octet will be divided into bits and bytes. When I say bits and bytes, zeros and ones. ఇక్కడ చూసారా, ఈ 255 ని ఇలా రాయొచ్చు, నేను 1111 అనేసి రాయొచ్చు. ఎట్లాగంటే, సో ఇక్కడ 2 power 1 is equal to 2, అగైన్ ఇక్కడ 2 power 2 is equal to 4, అట్లా 2 power తో క్యాల్కులేషన్ పెరుగుతూ వస్తుంది అనమాట. బట్ దట్ ఈస్ ఇర్రెలవెంట్ నౌ, because as I said, we have got formulas. Remember only this one thing, /24 అంటే 256 IP address వస్తాయి. Now if I increase this CIDR notation, IP addresses will get decreased. It means higher the CIDR notation, lower the IP addresses. Okay, so నాకు ఇప్పుడు 200 devices ఉన్నాయని చెప్పుకున్నాం కదా ఇక్కడ. I want 200 IP addresses. So which one I need to choose? I cannot choose this one because it has got only 128 IP addresses. So I have to go with /24 only. And all of these are based on the formulas which is already defined in Azure, which you can use. Now ఇక్కడ ఏంటి, 24 ఉంది, 256 వచ్చాయి, and 25 ఉంది, ఇదేమైంది by 2. And here, if there is an increase in one number, and here there is an increase by decrease by 2, it means 128 divided by 2, which will you will get 64. Now what if I decrease the numbers like CIDR notation, 10.0.0.0/23 అనుకుందాం. ఇప్పుడు ఏమొస్తుంది ఇక్కడ, it will be into 2, which will be 5112 IP addresses. And then if I go with 10.0.0/22, which will give me 1024 IPs. And likewise, if you decrease the number, which is like, if you decrease the CIDR notation, IP addresses will increase. Lower the number, higher the IP addresses. 0.0/21, which will give you 2048 IPs. It will keep on increasing until the range is available, it will calculate automatically and it will show you. Now, what I'm telling you is take this as a basic /24, which will give you 256 so that you can remember it easily. No need to remember each and every range, right? So the same thing applicable for class B and class C also. Okay, so class B లో ఎలా ఉంటుంది, సేమ్ థింగ్. ఇక్కడ /24 రాశాను కదా క్లాస్ A కి. లెట్ మీ రైట్ ఇట్ హియర్. 172.16.0.0 /24 అని రాయంగానే which is again 256 IPs. సో ఎలా స్టార్ట్ అవుతాయి, 10.0.0.1 నుండి 10.0.0 సారీ 2 నుండి it will go till the last IP address will be 10.0.0.255. సో ఈ మధ్యలో 1 to 255 క్యాలిక్యులేట్ చేసుకుంటే you will be getting 256 IP addresses. ఓకే, అలా ఉంటాయి అన్నమాట, ప్రతి ఒక్క దానికి అట్లా ఉంటాయి. సో సేమ్ రేంజ్ నేను మళ్ళీ మళ్ళీ యూస్ చేసుకోవచ్చా అంటే you can use it, but it is not a best practice because it is private network. So private IP address restrictions ఏం లేవు. లెట్స్ సే యూఆర్ ఫ్రమ్ విప్రో వాళ్ళు యూస్ చేయొచ్చు, టీసీఎస్ వాళ్ళు యూస్ చేయొచ్చు, నా పర్సనల్ ల్యాబ్స్ కోసం నేను యూస్ చేయొచ్చు, ఎవరైనా యూస్ చేయొచ్చు. దర్ ఇస్ నో రెస్ట్రిక్షన్. యూ హ్యావ్ టు అండర్స్టాండ్ the other side of this. It means communication ఎలా అవ్వాలి, then that we'll be seeing in next level. Okay, so in public IP addresses you will be getting unique IP addresses from the internet service providers. So there is no such thing where you can use the same IP address for multiple things. It means you can use it, there are different ways, but the thing is same number will not be there for different users. Okay, any question here? Just a simple topic, this one, as of now. Okay, so if no questions, take time and relax after the session. Now we'll move on to subscription and see how to create a virtual network. Even in storage accounts, I have skipped something under this storage account also, which is like networking. So once we understand the basics of virtual networks, then we can discuss about this again, as we'll have more concepts on networks. So in order to create a virtual network, you have to go to all services, and here you'll find under networking, you will see this virtual networks. But I will directly go to this search and I'll look for virtual networks. As of now, there are no virtual networks. Again, if I look at, even for virtual network, you need a resource group. Resource group is needed, and let's say you are deploying an application for HR department. I'm just taking an example for HR department. So you can define VNet, you can define storage account, you can define virtual machines, anything. However, when you deploy virtual network within that resource group, always make sure your VMs also will be deployed under the same resource group, so that if there are multiple VMs, they can communicate easily with little latency. సో లేటెన్సీ తక్కువ ఉంటే పర్ఫార్మెన్స్ బాగున్నట్టు అనమాట, ఆ కనెక్టివిటీ అనేది బాగుంటుంది. లైక్ యాజ్ వి సెడ్, when we were discussing about resource groups, I've given all the examples. So now let's go back to this virtual networks, create, and before I do that, I'm going to use existing resource groups, because there is no need to create resource groups every time. Okay, because if you create resource groups every time, then all your resources will be in different groups, and which will be difficult to have a communication, and even to manage those resources it's going to be difficult. So demo storage lab 1 ఎక్కడుంది చూసుకుంటాను నేను. Just I'm verifying this one. Prod HR department resource group, and this is a storage account. So ఈ resource group లో ఏమేమి ఉన్నాయి? I can see there are two storage accounts, and there is one logic app, and there is one connection. ఇది ఎందుకు వచ్చాయి అనుకున్నారు? If you remember, when we are discussing about cost alerts, sorry, not cost alerts, automation. Where is that automation? From storage account, we have enabled automation, this one. So here we have set this one. So for this reason, in the backend, they have deployed automatically as we have enabled that resource. You don't do enable anamata. Okay. So along with this, there is no virtual, sorry, this is one also API connection to get an email. So now we will see how to create a virtual network on the same resource group. I'm going to use prod HR department, and you can use any name. I'm going to use demo-vnet1. So naming standards are also very crucial in enterprise subscriptions, because if you give the similar name, or let's say vnet 1 2 3 4 5 something like that, it's going to be difficult. So I'm going to give let's say application name, or let's say prod, non-prod. So we should be easy to identify to any individual to manage. So always cross verify your resource group and the location is matching, because resource group is in ES2S. Sometimes when you create any other service, this might show something like this. In this case, it is a mismatch because your resource group is in ES2S and you are trying to create in a different region, like virtual network creation is in Canada East. So now there will be a logic which is missing. Of course, you can create, but it is not a best practice. Okay, so I'm choosing East US, and next one is IP addresses. So without choosing anything here, by default, I'm getting address space. So let me delete this one. Based on our example, I'm typing 10.0.0.0/24, and place your mouse cursor in a different location within the page, and you can see within the braces it is showing 256 IP addresses. So you no need to calculate any formulas using any formulas. By default it will come. So let me use 21. 21 is giving me 2048 IP addresses. సో నేను ఎందుకు /24 చెప్పానంటే ఆ 24 యూస్ చేసుకొని మీకు ఎన్ని కావాలంటే క్యాలిక్యులేషన్ చేసుకోవచ్చు. ఒకవేళ ఎక్కువ IP address కావాలంటే 256 ఇంటూ 2, అట్లాగే దానికి ఇంటూ 2 వేసుకుంటే నెక్స్ట్ లెవెల్ వస్తుంది. అండ్ అది ఇంకా తగ్గించాలనుకుంటే డివైడెడ్ బై 2. Right? So let's say I want 1000 IP addresses. I'll go with not 1000, 10,000. So I'll go with /18. And here I'm getting 16,384. So మరి ఎక్కువైపోతాయి కాబట్టి let me come back to 19, and here I'm getting 8,192, which is again మళ్ళీ తక్కువ అయిపోతాయి. So I have to go with 18 only. అంటే ఇక్కడ ఏంటి, నేను ఇక్కడ నెంబర్ తగ్గించేసరికి IP addresses count పెరుగుతున్నాయి అన్నమాట. So that is how the formulas have been defined, and you will be getting the count for your IP addresses using this. Okay, so but still, since we are using a lab, I am going with this /24. Okay, 256 IP addresses is my range. Okay, now there is one more option which is a subnet. So to make you understand better, if you are new to this. So let's say you have a place of 1,000 square feet. Okay, this 1,000 square feet is nothing but our range, which is 10.0.0.0/24. Now this is my range, and in terms of normal example, you can consider this 1,000 square feet. So what you're trying to do, you're planning to construct a home and you're going to segregate, let's say, kitchen 100 square feet, and for living area you're going to do something like 500 square feet. It means you are segregating your space into multiple ranges so that you can use it effectively based on your daily needs. That is just like normal home. And uh, let's say this one and this two here, 50 square feet here, 50 square feet for washrooms, and then like bedrooms, whatever that you want. So you can segregate based on the space that you have. లేదు నా దగ్గర 2,000 square feet ఉంది అంటే yes, you are going to segregate even bigger based on the availability. ఇక్కడ అంతే, 24 అంటే మన దగ్గర 256 ఉన్నాయి. నేనేం చేస్తాను, మళ్ళీ దాన్ని డివైడ్ చేస్తాను. ఎందుకు డివైడ్ చేస్తాను? 256 ఒక్కరికే అవసరం లేకుండా ఐఎమ్ గోయింగ్ టు యూజ్ మల్టిపుల్ థింగ్స్. సో ఎందుకు ఎలా యూజ్ చేస్తానంటే, లెట్ మీ టెల్ యూ. సో లెట్స్ సే ఐవ్ గాట్ 256 IP addresses. సో ఇది హెచ్ఆర్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్కి అనుకున్నాం ఆల్రెడీ, రైట్? హెచ్ఆర్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్లో మళ్ళీ వాళ్ళకు ప్రొడక్షన్, నాన్ ప్రొడక్షన్ ఉంటాయి. లేదు, లెట్స్ సే వెబ్ అప్లికేషన్ ఉంటుంది, డేటాబేస్ ఉంటుంది, ఓకే, ఇంకా ఏమైనా సమ్ అదర్ అప్లికేషన్స్ ఫర్ మేనేజింగ్ ఎంప్లాయీ పోర్టల్స్ అనుకుందాం. ఎవ్రీథింగ్ విల్ కమ్ అండర్ వెబ్సైట్స్. సో ఇప్పుడు ఏం చేస్తాను, 256 IPSలో 128 IP అడ్రస్ వచ్చేసి వెబ్ సర్వర్స్కి ఇస్తాను. అంటే సర్వర్స్ వేర్ దే హ్యావ్ హోస్టెడ్ వెబ్ అప్లికేషన్స్. నౌ రిమైనింగ్ 128 వచ్చేసి నేను DB సర్వర్స్కి ఇస్తాను. లేదు నాకు ఇలా వద్దు అనుకుంటే నేనేం చేస్తాను, మళ్ళీ ఐఎమ్ డ్రాయింగ్ దిస్ ఇన్ స్మాల్. సో 64 IP అడ్రస్ మాత్రమే వెబ్ సర్వర్స్కి ఇస్తాను, అండ్ ఇంకొక 64 DB సర్వర్స్ వాళ్ళకి ఇస్తాను. ఇంక రిమైనింగ్ 128 ఏం చేస్తాను, నేను అట్లాగే ఫ్రీగా ఉంచుకుంటాను. ఎందుకంటే ఫ్యూచర్లో నాకు ఏమైనా అవసరం అయితే అప్పుడు యూస్ చేసుకోవడానికి అట్లాగే ఉంచుకుంటాను. సో దట్ ఈస్ హౌ వీ హ్యావ్ టు ప్లాన్ ఇన్ ఎంటర్ప్రైజ్ ఆల్సో. There will not be any difference what I'm telling now. So let's go to this one. Hope you understand this subnet. So even to calculate this subnet, there are different formulas as we have directly available here. /24 and 256 అది యూస్ చేసుకొని నెక్స్ట్ లెవెల్కి వెళ్ళిపోతాం. Now before we go to subnet, there is one more option, IPv6 address space. So if you still wanted to have IP version 6, you can go with this, but you should be familiar and you should be very careful when you are using this IPv6, because there are very limited expertise in the market who knows IP version 6 in and out, because no organization, or I would say very limited organizations, are using this IP version 6 and they don't have much exposure to work on it. So that's the reason you should be very careful, and if you are really interested and customer wants it, you should be researching and doing all this stuff, okay, or take support from network expert. Now I'm not enabling IPv6 at this stage. And subnet, as we have got 256 IP addresses, so let me segregate based on this. So 64 ఒకదానికి, 64 ఒకదానికి, and I will keep 128 IP addresses free. You have to click on subnet. Minimum one subnet is needed before you create a virtual network. So without subnet, you cannot create a virtual network using Azure portal. So let's say subnet 1. I'm not using web and DB. I've just given an example. I'm going to use subnet 1 to make you understand better. 10.0.0 లేదు మొత్తం అన్ని IP అడ్రస్ ఒకే దానికి వాడతానంటే వాడుకోవచ్చు. Just like auditorium, full space will be used for auditorium. అట్లాగా I'm just giving an example. మొత్తం కావాలంటే ఇచ్చేసుకోవచ్చు అనమాట. Instead of segregating, you can give entire space. Now 10.0.0 sorry 0.0 ఇప్పుడు నేను ఎంత ఇవ్వాలి ఇక్కడ /64, which means I have to give 26. 24 to 56 అయినప్పుడు /25 will become 128 and /26 will give you 64 IP addresses. And you can see here it is showing 59 plus 5, which will give you 64 IP addresses. So ఇక్కడ 5 ఎందుకు separate గా రాశారని I will be discussing at later stages once we understand more about these networks. So total you are getting 64 IP addresses. Let's say if I make it as 25, which will give you 123 plus 5, the 5 will be common and which the total will be 128. So if I give /24, which will give me 256 IP addresses, I can still use /24. ఇప్పుడు నేను /23 పెడతాను. See here, it is showing an error because నీ స్పేస్ 1000 square feet ఉంటే నువ్వు you're trying to plan a construction in 2000 square feet. సో ఇది నీది కాదు. నీది కానప్పుడు ఎలా కన్స్ట్రక్ట్ చేస్తావు? You should be using only within your range, right? The same thing happening here because you have a limit of 256 IP addresses and you can use max up to 256. If you want to go beyond this, you go and purchase another 100,000 square feet, and just like that you go and purchase or go and create additional range or increase the range. Then you can go ahead and use beyond that as well. Okay, so since we have got a limit of 256 here, it is the limit which we have set. If you want, let's say 20, and when I give 20, which will show like 4096 IP addresses. Now ఇప్పుడు 22, I have to close and reopen, then it will be okay for me to update. Let me show you 10.0.0/22. చూసారా? Since our range is 4096 IP addresses, and if I give /22, I am okay with this 1024 IP addresses. 1019 plus 5, 1024 IP addresses, right? So likewise, you can manage your network. So let me reduce this number because to avoid confusion in thousands, we'll use normal numbers. Subnet 1, 10.0.0/25 26. ఇప్పుడు మీరు ఆ నెంబర్ గుర్తులేదు ఎవరు డివైడ్ బై 2 చేయాలంటే జస్ట్ ఇక్కడ 25 26 అని కౌంట్ నెంబర్ మారిస్తే కనుక you will get the number. Now there is an add gateway which we will see at next level, even this one also. Let's focus only on the VNet add. So subnet 1 ఇక్కడ add చేసాం, ఇంకా create చేయలేదు. If you wanted to add another subnet now at the time of creation itself, you can add. లేదు నెట్వర్క్ క్రియేట్ చేసిన తర్వాత మళ్ళీ అయినా క్రియేట్ చేసుకోవచ్చు అనమాట. జస్ట్ లైక్ అవర్ హోమ్, ఫస్ట్ టైం కన్స్ట్రక్ట్ చేసేటప్పుడు ఒక రూమ్ మాత్రమే కడతాను, ఓకే, తర్వాత కొద్ది రోజుల తర్వాత మళ్ళీ ఇంకో రూమ్ కట్టుకుంటాను, జస్ట్ లైక్ దట్. ఓకే, నౌ ఐఎమ్ క్రియేటింగ్ ఓన్లీ వన్ సబ్నెట్ హియర్ అండ్ ఐ విల్ షో అనదర్ సబ్నెట్ ఆఫ్టర్ ద క్రియేషన్ ఆఫ్ VNet. సో 256లో 64 యూస్ చేస్తున్నాను నేను, which is like /26. Security and these things we will be covering at next level, because ఇవి తెలుసుకోవాలంటే మీకు ఇంకా వేరే కాన్సెప్ట్స్ కూడా తెలియాలన్నమాట. Review and create event tags as well, and create. Right, so this will also take very few seconds, like it is done now, deployment is complete. Okay, so let's go back to the home page, which you can see the virtual network. If you're not able to see something here, go to virtual networks and refresh this page, and you can see this demo VNet. Okay, and this VNet is deployed in prod HR department resource group, and the location East US. Now click on this VNet. As usual, you have got different settings available under that. Okay, so ఇందులో కొన్ని settings already discuss చేసుకున్నాం. I will be skipping those settings like activity log, access control, ఇవన్నీ కామన్ గా ఉంటాయి అన్నమాట కొన్ని చోట్ల. I mean almost అన్ని సర్వీసెస్ ఉంటాయి. అవి మళ్ళీ ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేయకుండా I'll be moving to the next level. So from the overview page, you can see again resource group name, address space that you have used, the overall space. When I say address space, this is the overall space that is available for this VNet, DNS servers, BGP connectivity. These are like next level of settings. Okay, so overview page లో కొన్ని configurations ఉంటాయి. If you want to delete a VNet, you can delete. But ఆ VNet లో ఏదైనా డివైసెస్ ఉన్నాయనుకో డిలీట్ చేయలేరు. జస్ట్ లైక్ దట్, మీరు ఇల్లు కొట్టాలనుకుంటున్నారు, అందులో ఎవరైనా ఉంటే చేస్తారా? ఇట్ ఈస్ అ రిస్క్, ఇట్ మీన్స్ వాళ్ళకి ఇంపాక్ట్ అవుతుంది కాబట్టి. సేమ్ థింగ్ హియర్, ఇఫ్ దేర్ ఆర్ డివైసెస్ ఇన్ యువర్ VNet and it is not possible to delete, it means you have to delete those devices first, and then you can delete the VNet. So we'll see one by one. So in the overview page, these are the basic things that you can see. Activity log, as usual, we know like what kind of details will be there in this. And access control, we know about this one as well, how to restrict users based on their levels and based on different rules that they have. You can go with this feature. So ఇక్కడ చూద్దాం, నెట్వర్క్ లెవెల్లో ఉన్నాం కదా. నెట్వర్క్ లెవెల్లో these are the rules which we have inbuilt, right? Mainly network contributor will be the role can be assigned to a user who manages networks. Okay, and this is one thing that you can remember. That's the reason it is difficult to remember all. Make sure you have at least 3 of this, so that you can correlate something. Like, let's say I want to give a role to a network, virtual network in Azure, then you can say I will directly go and access enable network contributor. So if you say that, yeah, that should be fine, because network contributor, anything will be there, anyhow it will be there. You can see that. Okay, so let's go to settings, address space. You can see that address space and number of devices and peered networks. So there is nothing here. It means ఈ నెట్వర్క్ ఇంకొక నెట్వర్క్తో ఏదైనా కనెక్షన్ ఎనేబుల్ అయిందా, సో ఆ కనెక్షన్స్ కూడా అవసరం అవుతాయి. We'll see that. So it means we have got different types again. I've got a network here in Azure. I've got a network in Azure, network Azure, and this is VNet 1, VNet 2, and 3. And this VNet 1 wants to have a connection to this VNet 2 for some application connectivity. And VNet 2 needs a connection to this VNet 3. And VNet 1 again needs a connection to VNet 3. VNet 3 wants, where is that? Yeah. VM2 wants connection to, this is there. Yeah, everything is covered. So ఇట్లా కనెక్షన్స్ కూడా అవసరం అవుతాయి అన్నమాట. And if you have multiple connections that is required for your business, we have different concepts, which will be VNet to VNet peering, point to site VPN, site to site connection, or whatever it is, headset VPN, express route VPN. So these are the 4 types that we have to enable connections between Azure networks and as well as on premises to Azure. సో ఇప్పుడు ఏంటి, ఇక్కడ ఇవన్నీ Azure లో కనెక్షన్స్. నౌ నాకు let me draw one more diagram. సో నాకేంటి రిక్వైర్మెంట్, ఇది Azure లో నెట్వర్క్స్ చాలా ఉన్నాయి అండ్ వాటి మధ్యలో కనెక్షన్స్ ఉన్నాయి. If you want to enable connections between the networks within Azure, we are going to use this first one, VNet to VNet peering. Within Azure and also between the subscriptions, ఇది ఒక సబ్స్క్రిప్షన్ అనుకుందాం, లెట్స్ సే సబ్స్క్రిప్షన్ 1. నీకు ఇంకో సబ్స్క్రిప్షన్ కూడా ఉంది, అందులో కూడా వినెట్స్ ఉన్నాయి. ఈ వినెట్కి నాకు కనెక్టివిటీ కావాలి. ఎస్, యూ క్యాన్ డూ దట్ using a concept of VNet to VNet peering. We are going to see that in lab also. But before that, we have got more and more information to know, and then I'll come back to this topic. Okay, now within Azure అయిపోయింది, but now I have got my office in Bangalore, and where we have got 1,000 users working for me, and out of this 1,000 users, I want to enable connection to Azure for 100 users. Okay, so on-prem to Azure ki connectivity ఇవ్వాలంటే, yes, they can work on public internet. నేనేం చెప్పాను స్టార్టింగ్ లోనే, పబ్లిక్ ఇంటర్నెట్ ప్రైవేట్ అని చెప్పి అనుకున్నాం కదా. వెర్ ఇస్ దట్? యా, పబ్లిక్ అండ్ ప్రైవేట్. సో దే కెన్ యాక్సెస్ ఇట్ త్రూ పబ్లిక్, బట్ దేర్ ఆర్ లాట్ ఆఫ్ రెస్ట్రిక్షన్స్. ఎందుకంటే 100 యూజర్స్ త్రూ పబ్లిక్ ఇంటర్నెట్ యూస్ చేస్తున్నప్పుడు వాళ్ళ సిస్టంలో మాల్వేర్ ఉండొచ్చు, అండ్ దెర్ విల్ బి డిఫరెంట్ టైప్స్ ఆఫ్ అటాక్స్ దట్ కెన్ హ్యాపెన్. నేనేం చేస్తాను, ఈ అజ్యూర్ పోర్టల్ బయట ఎక్కడ వర్క్ అవ్వకూడదు. ఇఫ్ ఐ యూస్ పర్సనల్ డివైస్, దిస్ పోర్టల్ షుడ్ నాట్ వర్క్. ఇఫ్ ఐ యూస్ డివైస్ లైక్ మొబైల్ డివైస్ కనుక అక్కడ వర్క్ అవ్వకూడదు. ఇఫ్ ఐ యూస్ ఎనీ థర్డ్ పార్టీ సర్వీస్ డివైస్, it should not work. So they can enable VPN connections, and that VPN can be point to site, P2S, or site to site. It means from entire Azure site to entire on-premises site. And we also have express route. Okay, so ఇక్కడ రాశాను కదా అవి. These 3 concepts will be used to enable connections from Azure network to on-premises network. ఎందుకు అన్ని క్లౌడ్లో ఉన్నాయి కదా, మళ్ళీ నాకు ఆన్ ప్రెమిసెస్ కనెక్టివిటీ ఎందుకు అంటే, all the users are in your office and they wanted to access those servers, applications. ఓన్లీ డేటా సెంటర్ మీ దగ్గర లేదంతే, బట్ మిగతా అన్ని కూడా వర్కింగ్ ఎన్విరాన్మెంట్, కనెక్టివిటీ, యాప్ డెవలప్మెంట్, ఎవ్రీథింగ్ విల్ బి దేర్. సో వీఆర్ గోయింగ్ టు డిస్కస్ these 3 topics. So ఈ 3 topics, like out of these 4 topics which I have written here, only these first 2 things can be done in our labs. ఈ రిమైనింగ్ 2 సెట్టింగ్స్, ఐ మీన్ 2 టాపిక్స్ మన ల్యాబ్లో చూడలేం బికాస్ ఆఫ్ డిఫరెంట్ సెట్ ఆఫ్ డివైసెస్ దట్ ఇట్ నీడ్స్. సో హార్డ్వేర్ డివైసెస్ కావాల్సినవన్నీ మన దగ్గర ఉండవు కాబట్టి, బట్ ఐఎమ్ గోయింగ్ టు గివ్ ఎ హెడ్స్ అప్ ఫర్ యూ హౌ దిస్ కెన్ బి achieved and things like that we can discuss. Okay, and there are labs also. I'll be sharing the documentation for those two things, but not now. Once I am done with uh, these topics, then only I'll be covering that. So ఇక్కడ Azure portal లో address space there is nothing. Connected devices, as of now it is blank because network just create చేసాం అంతే కానీ అందులో డివైసెస్ అనేది యాడ్ చేయలేదు. జస్ట్ బిల్డింగ్ కట్టాం అంతే కానీ ఐ మీన్ స్పేస్ ఉంది అండ్ రూమ్స్ కట్టాం, అందులో ఎవరు లేరు ఇంకా, అంతే. ఓకే, ఇట్ ఈస్ జస్ట్ బ్లాంక్. Subnets. So at the time of VNet creation, we have created a subnet with 64 IP addresses. Slash 26 means 64. ఇక్కడ 59 చూపిస్తుంది కదా అనుకోవద్దండి, 59 ప్లస్ 5 చూపించింది మనకు. సో టోటల్ 64. ఆ 5 ఏంటి అనేది లైక్ స్టిల్ దెర్ ఇస్ అ టైమ్ టు కవర్. ఫర్ నౌ లెట్స్ ఫోకస్ ఓన్లీ ఆన్ దిస్. So let's say I want to create one more subnet because I have already created a VNet. Now subnet, and see here it is starting from .64. ఎందుకంటే మన రేంజ్ ఏంటి, 10.0.0.0/24 అండ్ 10.0.0 నుండి 63 వరకు, which will give you a count of 64 IP addresses. ఓకే, సో 63 తర్వాత నెక్స్ట్ నెంబర్ ఏంటి, 64. 64 నుండి నెక్స్ట్ నీకు ఎన్ని కావాలంటే అన్ని అంతవరకు కౌంట్ వస్తుంది. లెట్స్ సే ఐ వాంట్ అగైన్ అనదర్ 64. సో 64 నుండి 127 వరకు కౌంట్ చేసుకుంటే you will be getting remaining 64 IP addresses. So you are not calculating anything manually. Everything is predefined. Okay, but you should be very careful and you have to cross verify, validate what it is coming and whether it is uh, required for you or not. Subnet 2. And yeah, there are various services. ఇవన్నీ కూడా స్లోగా అర్థమవుతాయి మీ కాన్సెప్ట్స్. లెట్స్ ఫోకస్ ఆన్ దిస్ సేవ్. So subnet creation is also very simple. Now 64, 64, 128 ఉన్నాయి. ఇంకా నా దగ్గర టోటల్ 256 లో 128 IPs ఫ్రీగా ఉన్నాయి. సబ్నెట్ అండ్ నౌ సీ హియర్ 127 నుండి నెక్స్ట్ నెంబర్, లెట్స్ సే నీకు 16 కావాలంతే, 11 plus 5 16, యూ కెన్ గో విత్ /28. ఆర్ లేదు నాకు /24 కావాలనుకుంటే, సీ హియర్ it is not a valid CADR block because there is a maximum space of 256 IP addresses and you are trying to create beyond that, and also you are trying to create out of your range and it is overlapping with other VNets. Okay, I mean other subnets. ఇక్కడ subnets ఉన్నాయి కదా, దాంతో కనెక్టివిటీ ఐ మీన్ ఆల్రెడీ యూస్ చేస్తున్నారని చెప్పేసి అంటుంది అనమాట. ఈవెన్ ఇఫ్ ఐ గో విత్ హియర్ 28, ఇది వర్క్ అవ్వదు ఎందుకంటే 10.0.0/28 అనేది అంటే 0 to 15 అనేది ఆల్రెడీ యూస్ చేస్తున్నాం ఇక్కడ స్టార్టింగ్. మళ్ళీ అదే యూస్ చేయాలంటే కుదరదు అనమాట. ఓకే, సో లెట్స్ గో విత్ subnet 3 as well, and this time I'm going to use 32, right? So I'll use 27. 32 IP address I'll get, 27 plus 5, save. Okay, so I have used 64 for subnet 1, 64 for subnet 2, and 32 for subnet 3. Still I have free spaces. Okay, సో ఈ డివైసెస్ ఎలా డిప్లాయ్ చేస్తామని నెక్స్ట్ లెవెల్లో వస్తుంది, బట్ ఫర్ నౌ వీఆర్ ఫోకసింగ్ ఓన్లీ ఆన్ VNet. సో yeah, next topic will be peerings. ఎందుకంటే ఇక్కడ DDoS ప్రొటెక్షన్ ఇవన్నీ ఉన్నాయి. విల్ సి tomorrow I'll cover this DDoS protection and Bastion is not now. Yeah, I think that's it for the day. Tomorrow I will show you pairings, service endpoints, and private endpoints. I'll cover tomorrow. Any questions here?